Hi, everybody. We're so happy that Beth Love is going to be with us here today. And we're going to have lots of fun as we talk about what's on your fork during Earth Week. And first, my name is Natasha Zellerbach. I am the owner of Sustainability Pathways, and our mission is to bring sustainability to the individuals using the broad perspective of the 3 Ps of sustainability: people, planet, and prosperity. And Beth brings all of those to us today. And I'm really excited to have her here. Let me tell you a little bit about Beth. She's the founder of Eat for the Earth and the author of Taste Like Love book series. She's a gifted speaker, facilitator, teacher, and ordained New Thought minister. Beth has motivated and educated people in diverse contexts, such as nonprofit organizations, schools, churches, businesses, and the California state prison system. Wow. She's inspired large and small audiences in person and through radio and television, from local community TV to the Oprah Winfrey Show. So happy to have you here, Beth. I'll say a little bit about your organization. Eat for Earth is a nonprofit organization that makes it easier for people to eat more plants and less animal products to sustain all life on our Earth. We fulfill our mission through community education, partnership with institutions, creating policies and practices that increase plant food procurement and consumption. I love it. I'm so glad you're here. Could you tell us, oh, and you're also in Santa Cruz. I think that's really exciting. So I'm curious what Earth Week, Earth Day means to you from a historical perspective, and why is it relevant to us today?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, first of all, Natasha, so much for the work that you do in the world to make sure that individuals and organizations can express in more sustainable ways. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you having me on your show today. So thank you very much. Well, I'll be really honest here. I'll be vulnerable and say that although I am focused on environmental activism now and have been for 5 years, and Earth Day is extremely big in my awareness, my consciousness, my imagination, that it hasn't always been that way, because I've had a very varied career path in my life. Everything has been about transformation, but I started off and then eventually I ran nonprofit organizations, and I helped to found and start a New Thought church. And it was only a bit ago when I had a significant awakening, and I realized that all of the good work I would amount to nothing if we lost the habitability of our earth and our children had nowhere to live. And so that's when I really dove into environmental activism with a particular lens on diet. So I was aware of Earth Day, and I have been very environmentally aware and live an environmentally conscious life, and have done for decades. Earth Day was fun and everything, and it was kind of cool, but I didn't really understand the significance. And I'll have to say today that Earth Week and Earth Month and Earth Day are really because where we collectively in the United States and around the world really honor the fact that we have this Mother Earth, this planet, this Gaia that we live on, and that she is tending to us to the best of her ability, even though we have assaulted her in so many ways. And so I think it's important that we collectively look at this beautiful earth and say, we are going to be your stewards. But honestly, for me, every day is Earth Day. Every day is Earth Day. I mean, I live, breathe, eat, and sleep, dream about how can we take this mess that we have created as humans and turn it around, created it. And so that's the good news. We can change it. We can clean it up, at least right now, if we act quickly. So to me, as the founder and president of Eat for the Earth, in collaboration with my board members and my volunteers, we do a major push during Earth Week to really get the word out about the importance of integrating diet and food into the environmental movement, into the environmental message, and into environmental activism and action by local governments and industry leaders to clean up their act. So that's a little bit about me and Earth Day.
Thank you so much. You've given me a nice perspective. And of course, it's a big push right now, but every single day being a steward for Mother Earth every day. Yes, yes, I'm loving it. Could you tell us a bit about, you were talking about the 5 ways that the food on our fork impacts our planet.
Absolutely. Yeah, so there's so many more than 5 ways that what we eat impacts our earth and impacts everything. I mean, this morning I was writing on a Facebook post about how when we look at diet and the dietary change that's possible for humankind, that it really impacts almost any issue, almost any area of human functioning, because what we eat impacts our health. It impacts the health of our earth home. It impacts our communities. It impacts how we think about relationships. How it's sourced has something to do with how we've begun to think about each other and the world and the other living beings with whom we share the planet. So it really impacts on pretty much any issue. It has cultural significance. It has familial significance. So there's so many ways it impacts. And when you look specifically at the earth, there's far more than 5. But I put together a little presentation that has 5 of the areas of impact that that are very significant. There's more, but to fit in a short time, it's helpful to kind of look at some of the major things. So would it be okay if I showed that presentation now?
That'd be great. Would love it, Beth. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay. So, we're streaming. You're going to post this to a community of environmental activists, or at least people who are environmentally aware. And we are aware, as people who care about the earth, that the world is in crisis. That we're experiencing total environmental breakdown. It's a very tenuous situation. And even beyond the environmental community, most people are aware of the problem. Most people are aware. You can't be not aware with the fires, the floods, the hurricanes, the burning of the rainforest, et cetera, et cetera. But fewer people are aware of the true impact of diet, that it's one of the biggest contributors to the crisis, the many crises that we're facing in terms of the environment, which many have risen to the level of emergency and are on their way to becoming catastrophes. And what's interesting is, if you think about any of the top environmental challenges, whether it's the climate crisis, species loss, the deforestation, desertification, habitat loss, pollution, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, ocean dead zones, eutrophication, acidification of the oceans, et cetera, diet is one of the top 1, 2, or 3 contributors to almost every one of these problems. And that's due primarily to one aspect of our diets. And again, as talking to an environmentally aware audience, you probably have already guessed that aspect of our diet that is making the biggest contribution to food's overall contribution to environmental crisis is the animal products that we consume. The animal products, whether it's dairy, meat, fish, or eggs, those are the major contributors. And they have wide-ranging impacts, as I said, but today we're going to look at these 5 areas: land, water, wildlife, infectious disease, which I see is intertwined with the environment, and hopefully people are aware of that now, and the climate crisis. So we'll start with land. And one of the many problems with using animals for food is that it uses too much land to grow too little food in the context of a hungry world. So that's a setup, right? That's a setup. Too much land, too little food, a hungry world. We're set up. There's many other problems as well, but let's start with how much land does it use, okay? So too much. The livestock that we eat as humans, and the fields of grains and soybeans to feed them take up 28% of the entire land surface, and that includes the barren lands and the ice covered, the glaciers. So that's a lot, 28% of the land. And it only produces 12% of the global food supply for 28% of the land, right? And then if you look at that little pink triangle, that's the red I'm talking about, the livestock. It's bigger than the forest. They're only 26. If you look at that little pink triangle up in the upper part, that's 7%. That's the cropland to grow all the plant foods for human consumption, which produce 85% of our global food supply. Okay, so 12% of the food coming from 28% of the land, and 85% coming from 7% of the land. There's something wrong with this picture, right? Right there. And if you think about the world, this is a holistic topic. Again, it touches every area of our existence. So, I'm concerned about the environment, but I'm concerned about the environment because I'm concerned about the people of the world, right? It's not like I'm a polar bear, tree hugging, loving person that doesn't care about the people. We need our earth to be able to keep living here. And, one of the big issues is hunger in the world. So if everybody in the world, all the people that are alive today ate as we do here in America, and many of the countries in the world, many of the cultures in the world are copying us, and more people are starting to eat more like we do, more animal products, we would need 137% of the entire land surface of the earth, to grow food to feed the current world population. And that population is growing, projected to reach up to 10 billion people or so by 2050. So how are we going to feed 10 billion people on a planet where we're not feeding the current world population, especially with hunger growing and meat consumption on the rise, unless we change our diets? We can't do it. It's impossible. So here's another aspect. It's not just that we use too much land, but like I said, it's inefficient, right? Grows too little of our food. So here's a chart that shows some of the different animal products and how much feed it takes to produce 1 kilogram of that product. So for instance, beef, 25 kilograms to 1 pound of beef. Lamb or mutton, 15 kilograms of feed to produce 1 pound of mutton. It's less for pork and eggs, and milk even less, but let's wait on the milk. Let's not get too excited about dairy yet until we look at water, because of course milk is mostly water. And so it's just inefficient. Here's another way to think about it, is like the opportunity cost. If we have some corn and we're going to make something out of it, do we want to grow beef with it? Do we want to make some tortillas? And I'm going to use for this one a very conservative figure. This comes from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and they say instead of 25 pounds of feed to 1 pound of beef, they say 10.8 pounds of feed to 1 pound of beef. Okay, so if you had 10.8 pounds of corn that the National Cattlemen's Association says you can raise a pound of beef with, you could also make 7.5 gallons of hominy or 235 tortillas. Now, I love corn tortillas. I am going to opt for the tortillas. So changing diets, this is the good news. Some of the good news is that changing diets does reduce the land use. And even if we just make incremental changes, I'm plant-based. I want to make the biggest difference I can for Mother Earth and for our children forever. So I'm plant-based. That's the biggest contribution one can make. But the good news is even incremental changes are going to make a difference. So this is a recent study that looked at the land use of different diets. And the one on the left, the tallest bar, that's the baseline. That's how the Americans eat right now. The one next to it, the only change is it's the same diet, but with reduced calories, which Americans could stand to do on that diet. And then the next 5 are incremental decreases in the animal products. So, and replacing the calories with plants. So you can see that there's a steep decline. The more plants you eat and the less animal products, even with an omnivorous diet, is going to make your diet much more sustainable. On the far right is the vegan, the entirely plant-based diet, and that's the best in terms of land use. And then the two between that and the other diets, the 2 other short ones are vegetarian, different vegetarian diets. So there's many other land issues, but I'll just talk about 1 or maybe 2 more. I'm not sure how many slides I have, but half of the world's rainforests are gone. That's deforestation. Okay, the rate of deforestation is rising. Rainforests could all be gone in 100 years. Can you believe that? And we can't have a habitable planet without our rainforests. We need them. And the largest cause we found out in 2019, many of us knew longer than that, but in 2019, the world really got the news, the wake up call. The cattle ranching is the largest cause of deforestation. And the second largest we also heard about was soybeans. But what we didn't hear was that those soybeans are also to raise animals for food. They're not to make tofu for me as a vegan. Most of the soybeans, for instance, in the Amazon rainforest are being shipped to China and fed to pigs there for human consumption. So we're going to look next at water. And there's a number of different ways that water is impacted by human use of animal products as food. And we're going to start just by, how much water it takes to grow food. Okay, so we have here a chart that shows, and I'll enlarge it so you can see it better. It shows the gallons of water to produce 1 pound of food. And you can see these animals are riding high on the waves. It's 1,800 plus gallons of water to produce 1 pound of beef. Whereas, sitting right next to it, the potatoes, they're 25. I might get some of these numbers wrong. It's pretty small for me. The poultry is up there in the hundreds of gallons. The tomatoes, 14 gallons of water to raise a pound of tomatoes. So it's much lower for plant foods and animal foods. And in this continuation, you can see the pattern continues. And here's our dairy. Remember I mentioned the dairy? Well, maybe it doesn't take as much land, but look at how much water, 600 plus gallons of water for 1 pound of cheese. And you can see that fruits and vegetables are not the only ones that are more conservative, because in this chart, we also see some grain and some nuts, and they're much, much, much lower than the plant foods. I just want to pause here and say that there are a few exceptions. You've probably heard of the water hungry almond or whatever. To put it in perspective, the same water that it takes to grow a 1/4 pound burger, I'm going to take this down so I can see you. The same water it takes to grow a 1/4 pound burger, you could grow 4.5 cups of almonds. Nobody can sit down and eat 4.5 cups of almonds, but how many 1/4 pounders can people slam away? Okay, so yes, almonds are very water hungry for plants, but not compared to animal products. And I just want to bring forward here that there's a number of studies that have really demonstrated all of what I'm talking about today, and I'm happy to share references. But one of the studies that looked across the board at environmental impacts of foods, they were looking for how can you grow animal products sustainably. The lead author, one of the 2 lead authors, Joseph Poré, after 4 years of research, concluded there was no way, and he went vegan. But their study also concluded that the least harmful animal product has worse impacts than all or most of the most harmful plant-based foods. So it's not so much where it's grown, it's not so much how it's grown, it's what it is that you're eating. Okay, so water pollution is another issue. You're environmentalists. You may have seen these huge manure ponds. This one is from a hog farm, right? But there's this problem of waste, and not just the manure, but all the waste that comes from the animal agriculture industry. In the United States, 99% of our animal products come from confined animal feeding operations. There are these, there's these small, these very crowded facilities, right? 99% of our animal products come from there. And these are incredibly wasteful. And don't, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I think I'm going to say this later, but yeah, so the pollution from these gets in our waterways, it gets in our food, and it gets into our bodies. It makes its way to our streams, our rivers, and eventually to the ocean, killing and harming the environment and the living beings in the environment along the way. And this is things like heavy metals, pharmaceuticals, detergents, disinfectants, growth hormones, pathogens, parasites, excess pesticides and fertilizers, vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the really significant outcomes of this is particularly with those excess fertilizers, the phosphorus and nitrogen fertilizers, they go into waterways and they can create this condition called eutrophication, when the body of water becomes so overly enriched with nutrients that there's an excessive growth of algae, and that depletes the oxygen for the rest of the life in the environment, and eventually even for the algae. And it creates these huge swaths, many swaths in the ocean of dead zones where nothing can live because there's too little oxygen to support life. Okay, why do I bring this up in a presentation about what's on your fork? Well, the primary source of the nitrogen and phosphorus runoff is these huge monoculture fields that are being used to grow grains and soybeans for animals to eat. Remember, 7% of the land surface is growing the plant foods for us to consume directly, and 28% is growing the food for the livestock and the livestock themselves. So if you think about eliminating those fields or reducing those fields that are growing grains for livestock, you'll see that we can turn around these ocean dead zones, because we'll be sending so much less fertilizer into the environment. And this would be true even if we continue doing commercial agriculture, which I don't encourage. I encourage organics, but let's do organic food for people on the smaller amount of land. Free up the other land for rewilding, right? So then let's look at our next topic, which is wildlife. There's so many impacts on wildlife to the way we source animal foods, or even just the amount of animal foods that we eat. So starting with the loss of biomass. Some of you may have read this study since you're environmentalists. The World Wildlife Fund Living Planet Report, they bring it out every 2 years, and the last one in 2020 found that, excuse me a second, Golden Love, you're a little too noisy. I think you're being heard in this webinar. He told me to send him a text. I was just saying you're too loud. Okay, so so anyway, what they said was that wildlife populations of mammals, fish, birds, amphibians, and reptiles are down 68% since 1970. 68% in the last, 50 years at the time of the study. And I mean, I think that's really shocking. So why? Raising animals for food is a leading contributor, because it encroaches on the land that animals used to live on, people, non-human people. It causes pollution that kills them. It destroys habitat. Overfishing, of course, is a lead reason for biomass loss. Climate change, deforestation, et cetera, and all the feedback loops. This is an extremely sad graphic. I'll enlarge it. This is the percentage of animals on Earth broken into two categories: the wild animals in blue and the humans and our animals in red. And the graph on the top is what that looked like 10,000 years ago. The wild animals made up almost all the biomass on the Earth, and humans and our animals were this tiny little red sliver at the bottom, right? Okay, it's totally reversed now. The wild animals are a tiny little portion of the biomass on Earth, and humans and our animals, which take up, I believe, 4 or 5 times as much biomass as we do, are food animals. They take up almost all of the biomass, the animal biomass. Let me make that clear, because plant biomass is a huge part of the biomass. It's also the way eating animals for food is also the likely leading cause of species extinction through, again, same players: deforestation. Like, that's how species are going extinct: land degradation, pollution, climate change, expansive alien species like cows and goats, right? And also the plant species, coastal sediment buildup, wild carnivore loss through predator eradication programs and things like that. So livestock production is the single largest driver of habitat loss as well. Same things going on. We can't just go out and rape and pillage and exploit the Earth and its living beings and not have loss in these systems, right? Ocean species loss. Of course, it's us humans pulling fish out of the ocean. It's called overfishing, but at this point, it should just be called fishing, because fishing is too much, because we have 1/3 of our marine mammal species are threatened. Overfishing is a leading cause of killing them, even if we're not necessarily eating the mammals. Some of us are not eating like dolphins and whales. The ways we fish are killing all the wildlife in the ocean, right? So there's what do I want to say? I want to say that our oceans are greatly in peril. We know this, and we need to stop fishing. Um, Somebody's probably going to call me a white environmentalist for saying that, because there's many native people around the world, or indigenous people who make their living fishing, or who need to fish for their food. I'm not talking about subsistence fishing. I'm talking about these huge trawlers that are wiping out, dragging these huge nets across the bottom of the ocean and taking everything in sight, and all those other methods of fishing that are just wiping out the species. I think when I was a kid and I used to eat fish, we ate things like bluefin tuna and Atlantic cod and halibut, sea bass, Atlantic salmon. We ate these fish when I was a kid, which, I'm 60, I'll be 64 in a couple of weeks. But, that wasn't that long ago. These species are all endangered. Like, that's why they keep coming up with new species. Like, I don't eat fish anymore, but like if I'm at a restaurant with somebody and they order some fish, I don't recognize the name of it, because they've had to start going after other species because we've wiped out the ones we used to eat. So animal agriculture, and more broadly, how humans exploit animals and source animal foods and treat the natural world, are also the primary drivers of infectious diseases, whether they're global pandemics or any other zoonotic disease, such as the common cold, HIV, which came from horses, HIV/AIDS, mad cow disease, Ebola, etc. The CDC says that 3 out of 4 of our new and emerging diseases are zoonotic. That means they come from animals and they pass to humans. And the World Health Organization makes it really clear why. The greatest risk of getting a zoonotic disease is contact with animals or animal products. That's how we get it, right? And the UN Food and Agriculture Organization agrees. They say livestock health is the weakest link in our global health chain. So, this time around with COVID-19, the evidence points to the first human infection starting in a wet market in Wuhan, China. But this is not the only zoonotic pandemic we've had. It has come from livestock systems before, and it will again. And this is why. The situation in the wet markets are about the same or less, are not as bad as the situation in our animal feeding operations, our confined animal feeding operations, where again, the vast majority of the world and the United States animal products come from. The animals are stressed, completely stressed, because of the poor conditions. They can't move, they can't do their natural behaviors, they're too crowded. Their immune systems are weakened. They're on antibiotics just to make them grow better, but they're very weak. They're all genetically similar to each other, which creates vulnerability for a pathogen that wants to move from one to the other, right? There's masses of animals crowded together. So a pathogen can be in an animal that dies because of the poor conditions, and it can just hop into another one. So instead of the pathogen, the stronger pathogen dying, it's hopping into another one where it gets stronger and stronger. So the viral mutation keeps happening, making the virus deadlier and deadlier, and then making it likely to jump species. So that's how it happens. That's the process. And again, this has happened before. And not only is our exploitation of animals making us sick through infectious diseases, and as an aside, eating animal products is making us sick of chronic diseases, because diets centered around animal foods are the least healthy diets there are. But also the use of antibiotics in the industry is creating another health problem, making it more challenging to treat infections, because 80% in the US of the vaccines are being used in animals, in farm animals, and only 20% in humans. And in these animals, the bacteria are just, we're growing these superbugs by over-treating them with antibiotics. We're going to look, I saved the last, but most important perhaps for last, sorry, that was bad how I said that, but my favorite topic, the climate crisis, I saved for last. Okay, we know that this is a crisis. We know this is an emergency. We know that, it's not just changing and that we're in the far off future. We know that we need to take action soon to avert this, or we're going to lose the habitability of our planet. So, how much does animal agriculture contribute to the climate crisis? Well, figures range. Only take my figures from government sources or from peer-reviewed studies that are well done, that aren't influenced by industry. And well, I would say the 14.5 figure that's from the UN Food and Agriculture Organization is highly influenced by industry, because the Food and Agriculture Organization is completely tied in with the Animal Agriculture Organization. So that's one of the reasons it's really on the low end of the scale, but there's other reasons too. But there's good evidence to indicate that the figure might be even much higher than 51%. And one of the reasons for the discrepancy, especially with the UN FAO figure, is that they don't count the emissions from clearing rainforests or otherwise clearing land to raise animal products as part of the contribution of animal agriculture. They call it, they bury it in a category that they call land use. So that's a really significant. You think about all the greenhouse gas emissions that are being emitted when a rainforest is burnt, and then the opportunity cost of not having those trees sequestering it anymore. That's significant, but that's being called land use change. That's not being called meat heavy diets. But regardless of the specific percentage, the critical fact that people need to understand, and I hope that the environmental community as a whole will understand this, is that there is no solution to the climate crisis that doesn't involve a significant shift to plant-centric diets. Numerous recent studies have concluded that even if we reduce fossil fuel emissions to zero, we will not keep warming within the 1.5 to 2 degrees centigrade rise in temperature called for in the Paris agreements, unless it's accompanied by a dietary shift. It won't work. If cattle were their own nation, here's one of the reasons it won't work. I'll talk to you more about it, but if cattle were their own nation, according to the book Drawdown, they would be the third highest emitter of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's cattle alone. That's not the whole industry. Enteric fermentation, the way that cattle and other ruminant animals like sheep and goats digest their food, it's the largest source of anthropogenic methane emissions, and methane is a potent greenhouse gas. It shows here in this chart how potent, and it also really demonstrates how changing our diets can draw down greenhouse gases much more quickly than reducing or eliminating fossil fuels. And this is the point I really hope environmentalists will understand. You can see in this chart that methane is 86 times as potent in warming the earth as an equivalent amount of carbon dioxide, and nitrous oxide is 300 times as potent, and black carbon, which is that soot that happens when the rainforests are burned, or when California is on fire, by the way, that's thousands of times more potent than carbon dioxide. But the really good news is that these fuels go out of the environment much more quickly. You can see that methane, okay, let's start with carbon dioxide. Do you know, I drove my car yesterday. I have a good gas mileage, but a gas car, and some of the the fossil fuel emissions that came out of my car yesterday are still going to be around in hundreds and thousands of years. And some portion of it is still going to be here in 10,000 years. Methane from those cattle, a third largest greenhouse gas emitter, if they were a nation, methane is going to be gone in 12 years. Okay, nitrous oxide in 104 days or weeks to get the black carbon out of the environment. So, diet really matters. And, I really don't want people to miss this point. We have a short window. We have maybe 7 years. I mean, that's one of the very valid potential figures, is we maybe have 7 years to turn around this climate crisis, to take decisive action, or lose our opportunity to take action and go into runaway global warming. We can't wait hundreds and thousands of years to bring the greenhouse gases down out of the atmosphere. We don't have the time. And so all of this narrow focus on fossil fuels is not going to work. And I'll come back to that at the end. But if we stop burning the rainforest right there, thousands of times more potent greenhouse gases. That black soot is going to be gone in days to weeks. Okay. And we'll regrow the rainforest and be able to sequester more of the carbon, right? It's powerful. It's powerful, these changes, if we change diets. The other way that the other thing I want to mention again is that nitrous oxide, that's 300 times more potent. That is primarily from the nitrogen fertilizers, again, applied to those fields that are used to grow grains and soybeans for animals. But you see, our diet does matter. Again, like in the land chart, the highest, the diet that uses the most land, that emits the most greenhouse gas equivalents is on the top. It's a high meat diet. And then every incremental reduction in meat reduces the greenhouse gas emissions from your diet. And the vegan is the most conserving right there. So here's more about the good news. The Eat Lancet Commission said that if the world is eating a more plant-centric diet, we can reduce 80% of our global greenhouse gases by 2050. Now, 2050 is too late, but if we start shifting sooner, 80% if the world was eating plant-centric diets, not plant-based, but more plants and less animal products. And Drawdown, they were more conservative. They said if 50% of the world was eating a plant-rich diet, then that would draw down 66 gigatons by 2050 of carbon dioxide. There's more good news. When we make this dietary shift, we also stay within the realities of our land surface as the population goes, and we can ensure sufficient clean water for everybody. We can halt the rise in extinctions and biomass loss. We can reduce the probability of a worse global pandemic. And we can have, my favorite part is that, again, this is a holistic issue. It touches every part of human experience practically. We will have healthier, more compassionate, just, and well-fed human presence on Earth. I think about, there's something called carnism, which I'll just touch on very briefly here. It's an ideology that tells us that certain animals are for food or for clothing or for entertainment, and other animals we're supposed to love and care for, like our pets, like our cats and our dogs. And so this helps humans to kind of split and do this cognitive dissonance trick, where most of us are such kind and compassionate people, and we think of ourselves as someone who would never hurt a living being for our pleasure. And yet, most of us are eating these products of this very cruel industry that mutilates and tortures and murders animals and hurts the workers in the system. And it's just the way things are. That's carnism. It's just the way things are. It's normal, natural, and necessary and nice. So when we start shifting toward more plants, I think people will be able to reclaim our spiritual integrity and be able to say, wow, I get it. I'm going to eat in a way that's really in alignment with my values of not wanting to harm any for my pleasure. So I just want to close by saying, close the presentation. Obviously, we'll have some more chatting, but I just want to say again that a narrow focus on reducing or eliminating emissions from the fossil fuel industry won't work. It just won't work. The science is very clear. And so I have a charge for environmentalists, for you listening, and for environmentalists everywhere, because we are not going to make it unless we fully integrate diet and food into our climate activism. So please join me in integrating this topic into your general activism, wherever you are. It can't only be about the fossil fuels. We can't afford to allow diet to be relegated to the margins any longer. And I just want to further say, just as there's cognitive dissonance that allows us to continue eating animals that are sourced in very cruel ways, there's cognitive dissonance, or there's a way that we play a trick with ourselves, that when we find something that gives us what we want, even if it's not quite in alignment with our values, we figure out a way to make that match. That's a form of cognitive dissonance. And I just want to say, I want to beg and plead with people, if you're going to be talking about managed grazing or holistic grazing as a way to solve the climate crisis, that you really look more holistically than that, because we don't have enough land to move that 99% of animals that are currently being raised in confined animal feeding operations out onto an earth where we would already be using 137% of the land surface if people ate like us. We need to change our diets. And I want you to look at the science more deeply too, because the science shows that under certain very specific conditions, animals raised in those very specific ways, that can contribute to soil carbon sequestration, but that impact is lost after a short number of years as the soil carbon equilibrium reaches equilibrium. And the vast majority of the real science around it shows that it isn't so. And it is not a solution. So if you don't know very much about holistic grazing, please contact me. I'll send you some links to some real science. And let's not keep nurturing people's idea that they can keep eating beef and feel good about themselves and say, I love the earth and I'm going to eat beef. When cattle would be the third largest nation if they were a nation in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So there's my presentation. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to take your questions. I can't hear you, Natasha, because you're muted.
Thank you, Beth. Beth, that was just amazing. Thank you so much for just highlighting food and what an amazing impact we can make. And the point that fossil fuel isn't going to make the difference with climate change, that really brings it home for me.
Yeah, and I want to say that I'm not suggesting that we keep burning fossil fuels as we do. We need to do everything. I'm not one of those people that says I've got the silver bullet. There's no silver bullet. We need to change our systems across the board. But so fossil fuels alone will not do it. That's my point.
Well, I have a little question for you. How would you suggest we go ahead and make these changes in our day-to-day? I know that food, you've talked before about how food is ingrained in our culture. It's the way the world is. I eat meat. I have to eat meat or chicken in order to get protein in my diet. I mean, we have these thoughts. What do you have to say about how we can continue to be more, I mean, I'm already been paying attention to food, but this just really up levels it a lot. What's one thing that I could do?
One thing you could do. It's hard for me to limit myself to one. I think for starters, it's important for us to confront, it depends on the individual. Okay. It depends on the individual. If somebody's having health challenges and if they're having significant health challenges, that is the easiest way for people to adopt a plant-based diet. Because if somebody's up against a wall and they're thinking that they might be facing open heart surgery, that might seem more radical than eating plants. That just might seem more radical. So if people are having health problems, I would encourage them to, I can certainly give you lots and lots of resources. There's tons of resources where they can get support for how to do that. If that's not the case, it might take a little more work because it is countercultural. Yes. It's so countercultural, even to reduce your intake of animal products. You're going to be out in a restaurant and you're going to order something that doesn't have any animal products in it, and people are going to point it out. They're going to ask if you're a vegan, and then they're going to make fun of you because you're a vegan, because that's part of how we keep the cognitive dissonance going, right? Vegans are the butt of so many jokes, right? We know this. So it's countercultural. So you're going to have to work a little harder. I just want to say that I really think getting facts is a really good starting point. Like, get the truth, and the truth is out there. My mother started teaching me about this stuff. Red meat causes colon cancer. Red meat and processed meats cause cancer. She started teaching me about this when I was a kid. The science has been around for decades. So we know this, but there's so many forces that are really making a lot of money off of us eating the way we do. There's the entire meat and dairy industry. There's all the producers. There's the diet. Like, we wouldn't have to be on diets. You don't need to go on a diet if you're eating whole plant foods. You can eat as much as you want. I mean, I pile my plate totally full. One of the mistakes people make when they go on a plant-based diet is they don't eat enough, and then they feel hungry and weak, and then they go eat some cheese or some meat or something or some sugar because they're feeling hungry and weak. And I tell them, you're not eating enough calories, because whole plant foods are very low in calories, and you're used to eating things like oil, which is like super dense calories, or meat and cheese. They're so dense in calories that they fill you, that you're not full when you like they take up so much little less space in your tummy, right? So you can fill your tummy full of whole plant foods, you know, and it's less calories than this little tiny puddle of oil, right? Or this little slab of meat. So sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but you know, we wouldn't need diet gurus, wouldn't need diet books, we wouldn't need diet clinics, we wouldn't need all of that stuff if people were eating whole plant foods. If you look at any indigenous population, you're going to see in most parts of the world, not any, but in most parts of the world, indigenous populations, their traditional diet was primarily plants. The only people that were eating a lot of animal products in many traditional societies were the people who had a lot of money. You know, it's expensive, it's yeah, it's inefficient, right? So
Yeah.
most indigenous people were eating. You look at the indigenous Hawaiians before we corrupted them with our diets, the Native Americans. You look at the Japanese people. You know, you look all over the world. They were slim and healthy, right? It's the introduction of these American diets high in animal products. So I'm kind of off on a tangent, but yeah. So one thing you can do is get facts, get information. Nutritionfacts.org is a great place to start. There's many other places to start. After you get support, after you get facts, you got to get support. Like you have to have support. Like join a community, join a meetup or a Facebook group or something. Get some support for yourself, and just take a step. You know, just take a step in that direction. You know what I really highly encourage people to do, actually. I mean, one thing I get is that we don't need everybody to become vegan. We don't. We can do it environmentally if people just make some very significant changes and center plants on their plate and maybe have the animal products if they want to as a condiment or a much smaller amount. This is what the studies show. The Eat Lancet report, it showed that if we were eating very small amounts of meat, I can't remember the amounts, but I think it's 3 ounces of red meat a week and maybe a little bit more chicken and fish a week, you know, very small amounts and mostly plants, that's how we're going to survive on this planet and have enough food to feed 10 billion people in 2050. That's how we can do it, right? So you don't have to go all the way to plant-based, but what I like to really encourage people to do is try it for 3 weeks. Or if you can't do it for 3 weeks, try whole food plant-based for 1 week. You will see radical changes in your health. Radical changes in your health. It doesn't take our bodies long to recover. Once we stop assaulting them with cholesterol and saturated fat and toxic animal proteins and all the other toxic molecules that are in these animal products that, you know, that are causing inflammation, it doesn't take long. I've had people in some programs I used to run, one woman within 3 days, her cholesterol had gone down 39 points. I mean, you know, like you can find programs. There's lots of programs that are 3 weeks long, or many of them are free. You know, there's shorter programs, a 10-week jumpstart that Plant Pure Communities does. Try it out, see how you like it. And then you'll have the diet, you'll like it, most likely you'll like it. And then you'll have the diet that is the best for the earth and the best for you and the best for human spiritual integrity and the best for the cause of having an earth where everybody can eat.
Yeah.
So that was quite a lot in answer to your
I
one
really
thing. Sorry, I can't discipline myself to one.
No, I like it. Get the facts, join a community, and try Whole Foods for a week. This is a lot of great information. I'm going to be posting some of this and integrating and engaging people in my Facebook group and other communities. Thank you, Beth. This has just been amazing. Can you tell us how we can get involved in the work that you're doing? I understand you have some events coming up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for asking, Natasha. Yeah. So it's Earth Week. So we're quite, we're focused on getting the word out to the extent that we can. So we have, Eat for the Earth started 2 years ago in January of 2019. And in our first year, we focused primarily on activism in Santa Cruz. And we just shot out of the box really fast. We did a ton of events. We gave out thousands and thousands of free samples. We fed people over 400 free meals. We had dinner parties and we gave them a meal and a presentation. And it was really an exciting and heady time. And then COVID hit. And like the rest of the world, we kind of jumped online. And, you know, it's been really fun online and we learned a lot about online education and we've had a much broader reach in some ways, but I miss that kind of activist feeling, that part of being part of this, you know, this community of activists working together. And even though we have, you know, we have a board of directors that's very active and we have some volunteers, you know, what we decided to do for this Earth Week is to launch a community of activists to focus on this issue. And so we have 2 launch events. They'll be pretty much the same. One of them's a little shorter. The first one is tomorrow, and it's at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And we're calling it the Eat for the Earth Communities launch. The second one is on Sunday, the 25th at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And that's, it's the same Eat for the Earth Communities launch. It's part of Vegan World 2026. And I can give you the links to all these things. So these launches, we're looking for people who already care about this issue. And even if you just learned about it today, but you're like, I'm ready to take action now. Like this is not okay that I'm an environmentalist and I didn't know this. I want to let other people know. I want to write a letter to the editor. I want to do something. If that's you, or if you're already on board and you've been doing activism for this cause, but you feel alone and you, like me, want to really play in community with other activists, that's what this launch is for. It's for people like that. We're going to come together. We're going to inspire and motivate each other. And it's not just going to be about planning, but it's going to be about time specific planning, where by the end of the session, each person leaves knowing what they're going to do within a named time frame and making a commitment to doing it and being part of a community that's going to help and support them and inspire them and encourage them and hold them accountable. And that's what we're doing. And I'm super excited about it because we've had a fair amount of people sign up already, but there's always room for more. It's online, right? So if that's you, if you want to make a difference and you believe it's possible, even though you might be scared, I'm scared. It's like, this is a big change for humankind, but we've got to do it. We've got to do it if we want to keep living here. So if you're like there with me and you want to play, you want to get going, and you want to be part of a community doing this, come to one of the Eat for the Earth community launches. The other things we're doing this weekend are both in Santa Cruz, and they're our first in-person events since COVID started, and they're both outdoor, socially distanced, masked events. And our team is going to be very, very careful, and they're prepared. I've told them, like if anybody's kind of crowding in too close because they're feeling their oats with their vaccine or whatever, remind them. The CDC says we're still supposed to be social distancing and masking in public. So, anyway, if you feel safe going out to an outdoor festival, then I want to invite you to one of those as well, or both if you want to go. One of them is on Saturday. It's in downtown Santa Cruz at the parking lot number 4, which is where the farmers market happens on Wednesdays. And it's called Celebrate Earth Day at the Commons. And we'll be one of many environmental groups there. And there's also music and some art project for kids, a very COVID conscious art project, and a lot of other things going on. And then the other one is that's on Saturday. Saturday at, I'll have to give you that information. And then on Sunday, it will come to me. Oh, it's from 1 to 5. And then on Sunday from 1 to 3 at the La Selva Beach Community Church in La Selva Beach, they're having a much smaller, probably Little Earth Day festival, and we'll be tabling there as well. So we'd love to see you for that. If people aren't available at these times, there's still many ways to get involved with Eat for the Earth. I would encourage you to go to our website, eatfortheearth.org. And it's all spelled out, eatfortheearth.org. And check it out on the homepage. You can sign up for one of our Facebook groups, which is where we'll be running these activist communities through. You can sign up for our mailing list. You can learn more about our organization. Browse the web. You'll see there's a lot going on and a lot of ways for you to get involved. And I'd love to play with any of you.
That is fabulous. You've given us some really good ways to continue the momentum of all this amazing information and energy that you've shared with us today. Beth, I think that's it. I really want to say thank you very much. And we are now really connected and got a mission to go for. So,
yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Natasha. And I feel really grateful to be connected to you in particular, because it's so important that we integrate this issue into the environmental movement. And since you're helping businesses to green their practices, you know, a lot of the, like the Green Business Council here in Santa Cruz County, they tell people, you know, to change your faucets and to, you know, to compost and to recycle and all these things, but they don't tell people, you know, businesses, like, look at what's in your cafeteria, you know, encourage your employees to eat plant-based. And so these are the things we need, is that integration that I was talking about. And so being partnered with you, and you knowing this information now, this is something you can bring to your clients for a way that they can contribute to the true sustainability of our earth.
I'm loving it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
In the recording, why don't you stay on and we can chat for a moment.
Okay. Thank you so much, Natasha.